Oren stood at the mouth of the Desert Signal Canyon, where orange stone walls rose high against a starless black sky. A cold heat shimmer rippled across the dust, bending the air into shapes that didn't belong. His headphones hummed with a low bass frequency he hadn't chosen, a pulse rising from somewhere deep beneath the canyon floor. He pressed his hand against the warm rock and felt it vibrate like a living drum. A dark mark appeared on the stone where his fingers touched, spreading outward in thin black veins. Behind him, his shadow stretched too long, and its antennae were sharper than his own. Oren moved deeper into the canyon, where broken transmitter arches curved overhead like the ribs of something ancient and hollow. The bass pulse from below had changed, now matching his heartbeat, forcing his rhythm to sync with the cursed frequency. His headphones had grown heavier overnight, their edges thickening with a dark residue that looked like scorched metal. When he passed a silent beacon pit, its dead light flickered once, responding to him alone, casting his reflection across the dust-filled glass. In that reflection, his orange skin had deepened to a burnt amber, and his downward hair tuft hung darker than any shadow the canyon could cast. Somewhere beyond the broken arches, a silhouette with his shape but sharper antennae watched from the cold shimmer and then was gone. The dust-filled control ruins at the canyon's deepest bend still hummed with a frequency only Oren could feel, vibrating through his teeth and settling behind his black eyes. His antennae had grown noticeably longer since entering the passage, their tips curving forward like sensors hunting for something he didn't want to find. Each kick drum pulse from the caverns below sent orange stone dust spiraling upward in patterns that mimicked his silhouette. He tried to stay calm, breathing steady, but his headphones now emitted a faint tone he couldn't silence. His reflection in the dusty control glass showed his mouth frozen in an expression he wasn't making. Behind that glass, a dark mark shaped like a handprint slowly spread across the abandoned console. The broken transmitter arch at the canyon's eastern rim crackled with static as Oren passed beneath it, and his headphones locked tight against his skull like something clamped from within. His orange skin had deepened to a burnt amber across his arms and chest, the color of desert stone left too long under a cursed sun. His downward hair tuft now hung past his jaw, heavy and dark as a shadow poured from his own head. Each step triggered a bass pulse that echoed through the silent beacon pit below, and the cold heat shimmer above the canyon walls bent around his sharpening antennae like light avoiding something wrong. Far across the ridge, a silhouette shaped exactly like him stood motionless against the black sky, though it had no headphones at all. Oren descended into the echoing base cavern beneath the canyon floor, where every footfall triggered a kick drum pulse that rang through the orange stone like a buried heartbeat. His antennae had grown jagged and forked at the tips, scraping the low ceiling and leaving thin, dark trails across the rock. The burnt amber of his skin now carried streaks of deep rust that spread like old stains across his shoulders and neck. His headphones hummed a frequency he couldn't silence, a tone that made the dust on the cavern walls drift upward instead of settling. When he raised one hand against the cold shimmer ahead, his fingers cast 5 separate shadows, moving in 5 separate directions, and none of them matched his shape anymore. The broken transmitter arch rose ahead like a rib cage of orange stone, and Oren stepped beneath it as a low bass pulse shuddered through the canyon walls. His headphones had thickened overnight, the padding swollen and fused against his skull like they were growing into him. The rust streaks across his body had deepened to near black bands that wrapped his torso in slow spirals. His downward hair tuft hung heavy and dark, swaying against his forehead even when no wind moved. Above the arch, a dead beacon flickered once with pale light, responding to something inside him that no longer felt like his own signal. Oren descended into a silent beacon pit, where dust hung motionless in cold shimmer light, and his antenna scraped the narrow walls with a sound like tuning forks struck against bone-dry stone. His orange skin had darkened to a burnt umber across his arms and throat, the color of desert rock left too long under a black sky. The headphones hummed a bass note he hadn't triggered, vibrating steadily against temples that felt like they belonged to something else. His downward hair tuft had stiffened into a rigid, dark blade, pressed flat against his brow. When he looked down into the pit's depth, a shadow, wearing his exact silhouette, stared back without moving. And the hum grew louder. Oren dragged himself through a dust-filled control ruin, where broken transmitter arches leaned like the ribs of something ancient and hollow. His orange skin had deepened to near rust, and dark veins of shadow threaded visibly beneath the surface of his forearms. The headphones no longer sat on his head so much as gripped it, their band fused against his temples with a weight that bent his neck forward. His antenna had grown jagged new points, splitting at the tips like forked signal receivers scanning frequencies he didn't want to find. A cold heat shimmer rippled across the ruin's dead console screens, and in every dark reflection, his black eyes stared back wider than they should have been. Oren stumbled into a silent beacon pit, carved deep into the canyon floor, where orange stone walls rose around him like a throat closing shut. His skin had gone the color of burnt iron, and the shadow veins now climbed his neck in slow, branching patterns that pulsed with a rhythm not his own. The headphones hummed a low frequency that vibrated through his jaw, and his downward hair tuft had darkened to pure black, hanging like a dead signal flag. His antennae twitched independently, tracking something circling above the pit's open mouth. Against the cold heat shimmer of the canyon sky, his silhouette no longer looked like anything that had ever been calm. Oren dragged himself out of the beacon pit and into a dust-filled control ruin, where shattered transmitter consoles lined the walls like ancient teeth. His burnt iron skin had deepened to a color closer to scorched rust, and when he moved, his joints clicked with a hollow bass resonance that echoed through the ruin's collapsed archways. The headphones had fused partially into the sides of his skull, their edges no longer distinguishable from bone. His black eyes now reflected nothing at all, not even the faint orange glow still bleeding from his chest. A shadow that was not his own sat perfectly still in a cracked monitor screen, watching him breathe. Oren reached for the console to steady himself, and every dead transmitter in the ruin flickered once.
Ready for a challenge? According to statistics, only 3% of viewers manage to like the video and subscribe to the channel before the timer runs out. Write a comment if you made it in time.
The cold heat shimmer above the canyon had turned black, rippling like oil against a starless sky. Oren stood beneath a broken transmitter arch where orange stone had split into jagged columns, and he realized his antennae had grown curved barbs near their tips that hummed with a frequency he could feel in his teeth. His downward hair tuft hung past his jaw now, dense as shadow poured from a vessel. Each step produced a kick drum pulse that cracked the canyon walls wider, sending dust cascading from ancient ledges. When he looked up through the shattered arch, something wearing his silhouette looked down from the rim, but its shape had too many angles. The beacon pit swallowed all sound when Oren descended, and the silence was worse than any echo. His headphones had fused ridges along their bands, bony and sharp, pressing grooves into the sides of his skull that pulsed with deep rhythm. His orange skin had darkened to the color of ember ash, and where his black eyes had once been smooth, they now carried faint geometric patterns that shifted when he blinked. Dust-filled control ruins surrounded the pit floor, their dead screens flickering each time his kick drum heartbeat thudded. His downward hair tuft dragged against his chest like a pendulum of solid dark. Behind every dead screen, Black's mark glowed briefly, then vanished into the dust. The cold heat shimmer above the canyon had turned black, rippling like oil against a starless sky. Oren climbed through a broken transmitter arch and felt his antennae scrape stone, their tips now curved into serrated hooks that hummed with frequencies he couldn't name. His orange skin had hardened into something closer to chitin, cracked along his forearms with lines that pulsed dim amber each time his kick drum heartbeat fired. His headphones no longer sat on his head, but grew from it, their edges fused into ridged crests of dark cartilage. When he whispered his own name, the canyon walls answered in Black's voice instead. Oren dropped into a silent beacon pit and felt the ground vibrate beneath him like a buried drum waiting to be struck. His downward hair tuft had calcified into a rigid dark fin that scraped the pit wall as he turned, leaving grooves in the orange stone. The chitin plates across his chest had spread upward, covering his throat in segmented armor that pulsed with each bass heartbeat. His black eyes now reflected nothing, not even the faint amber glow leaking from his own cracked skin. When he opened his mouth to breathe, a low, cursed frequency poured out instead, and every broken transmitter in the canyon above him flickered alive. Black's silhouette stood at the pit's rim, perfectly still, watching. Oren climbed from the beacon pit into a dust-filled control ruin, where ancient transmitter consoles stood frozen under black sky. His headphones had fused completely into his skull, twin ridges of dark chitin that hummed with frequencies no living thing should carry. The orange of his body had deepened to something closer to burnt ember, cracked with lines of dim light that pulsed in bass rhythm. His antennae had grown curved and blade-like, scraping the stone ceiling and sending showers of dust into the cold heat shimmer. He reached for a console, and it powered on beneath his touch, broadcasting his cursed heartbeat across the canyon. In every shattered screen around him, Black's face stared back where Oren's reflection should have been. Oren staggered through a narrow orange stone passage where the canyon walls pressed close and vibrated with deep bass. His body had darkened past ember into something like scorched rust, and the cracks across his surface no longer glowed, but throbbed with a slow, silent pulse. His downward hair tuft had hardened into a rigid spike of shadow that swayed against gravity. The blade-like antennae now curled forward past his face, framing black eyes that had begun to emit faint rings of cold orange light. He opened his mouth, and a low frequency poured out, shaking dust from the passage walls. Far ahead, Black's silhouette waited, where the passage narrowed into absolute dark. Oren emerged from the passage into a vast, dust-filled control ruin, where broken transmitter arches rose like the ribs of something ancient and hollow. His body had gone fully black, yet beneath the surface, a deep orange pulse still moved like a dying heartbeat trapped in stone. His headphones had fused into his skull, their shape warped into jagged crests that hummed with frequencies no living thing should carry. The blade-like antenna had spiraled into tall, twisted horns, and his rigid hair tuft pointed downward like a dark compass needle aimed at something buried. His black eyes now burned with steady rings of cold fire, and when he exhaled, the ruin's arches resonated with a bass tone that cracked the dust into spiraling patterns. Above him, the black sky shimmered with heat that carried no warmth, and Black's mark glowed across every broken arch like a signal finally answered.